Hello and welcome to episode 103 of Fergo and the Freak. I'm that bloke from Rugby League Project, Andrew Ferguson. You can find me on Twitter at AndrewRP. And joining me as always is the glorious League Freak, who you can find on Twitter at League Freak. How you going there, mate?
I'm going very well, Andrew. I don't think our listeners would really understand that we basically press record and we nail it the first time on these podcasts. It's fantastic how we've just got that consistency about ourselves.
Yeah, we have never had to re-record any part of the podcast ever.
Never ever, especially not the intro.
Especially not the intro. It's just all out smooth sailing from start to finish.
Yeah,
I don't think anyone will catch on to what happened.
No.
Big weekend of Test footy's just gone behind us there. We had 5 international matches take place. And I suppose we'll start quickly. We'll do them in chronological order. Why the hell not?
Yeah, that's the way to do it.
Right, so on Friday night, which is Saturday morning Australian time, Greece played Scotland. And this saw Scotland win 42-24 and gave Scotland a place in the 2021 World Cup.
Yep. And very thankful that Scotland will be there.
Yeah, they'll be...
it'll be so good.
You were saying before when we were having a chat here that there's a lot of European teams in this World Cup coming up.
Yeah, and I see where you've got to have the places for, you've got to reserve blocks, I guess is the way to put it, so that you do get a representation of rugby league from across the world. But I also think that when you look at where rugby league is strongest, you need to acknowledge that the Southern Hemisphere has way more talent, way better teams and things like that. And I think that there is a danger where if we just go by geographical locations and how teams qualify in through these tournaments, if we just go by that, we're going to leave some good teams out and some important strategic teams out as well. So I think that there's a danger of that happening, but I don't think we're quite there yet because they're having 16 teams in, but we're pretty close now.
Yeah, the good thing is they have expanded it to 16 teams instead of that stupid 14-team format they had where 2 groups were playing inter-group matches, and that was just stupid. So at least now they've got 4 groups with 4 teams in them. It makes a bit more sense.
Yeah.
It's looking like we may only get one team from all of the Americas, and that's going to be Jamaica. USA and Canada may not even feature in the World Cup, which to me sounds like a bit of a lost opportunity.
Yeah, me too. I mean, and Jamaica's really pushed hard over the last few years to get there, and it's not saying they don't deserve their place. I think that we need the USA or Canada in there as well.
Yes, we do.
And that's more of a strategic move for the game, I believe. And that's where I think that a lot of these sporting organizations where they become international, they can lose track of some of the things they kind of need to do, trying to please everyone else. And, I can see where there's good things that come out of that, having almost like a democracy for your sporting organization. But I also think at some point you need to be able to say, hey, we need a team from this area. And I think the way that you really should be doing that is through the qualification process, where if you had a qualification process where it was, you knew you were going to get the USA or Canada in there, I think that would be good for the game.
Yeah, I don't know what the system at the moment in qualifying is a bit sort of, how could I be kind of just say, it's a bit all over the shop. There's repecharges and playoffs and then so many different things going on to try and give a lot of teams as many chances as possible to get to the World Cup, which I suppose is a good thing. But at the same time, it can be a bit convoluted and it's hard to follow for even the casual fan.
Or even the dedicated fan.
Yeah.
We watched some of these smaller international games and we're like, has this got anything to do with the World Cup? Have they made it yet? I don't know. And it should be a lot easier to follow, quite honestly.
Yeah. And I think they just need to have dedicated tournaments and just say, right, the top 2 or 3 teams in this entire tournament will go through the World Cup. Instead of having, I think one thing I'd have in the qualification is instead of having pools like they do in the World Cup, I don't mind the pools idea in World Cup, but I think in the qualification process, if we're going to be fair dinkum about it, every team that's in each section, like say all the teams in the Americas, should play every other team in the Americas in one tournament that's hosted over, a month or so. Everyone plays one another, and the top, say, 2 or 3 teams, depending on how many teams are in the comp, they automatically go through. And that way you're making sure you're getting enough teams from every different part of the world to be competing in this.
Yeah, and look, I guess they try and do that as much as they can. I just like, and I think there's only a couple of places left in the World Cup now. I just look at some of the teams. I mean, does Wales, Scotland, and Ireland ever face any sort of issue of getting into the World Cup? They're always there, and they're not that good at rugby league.
Well, they're usually up against teams that are essentially seen as being the next sort of rung down below them.
Yeah.
So it means that Wales, Ireland, and Scotland do get an easier run into the World Cup. Not saying it's going to be simple. I mean, Scotland came up against Greece and only beat them by 18 points. That shows actually more than anything how far and how quickly Greece have advanced, despite all the challenges they've got over there. But it still shows too that Scotland were able to get the job done. And I mean, we saw it when Serbia were down to 12 players for part of their game the week before against Scotland. They got hammered by 80.
The thing is, though, should those teams already be there and we still haven't got Cook Islands in? Like, the Cook Islands should smack all 3 of those teams.
You'd think they would. And I think there's a match coming up, which we'll get to later, which is to determine the last remaining spot. And I think it'll be between Cook Islands and the USA. So yeah, we'll get to that soon. But Scotland's through to the World Cup. Greece has gone into I think they've gone into a repechage game, I think. I should have a look at that. Preparation would have been good.
Yeah, we should have prepared. But here's the thing. Like, you and me are like rugby league tragics. And if we're sitting here going, I'm not real sure what's going on there, then there's something missing, whether it's the way that these games are promoted, whether it's just... I mean, it's hard to get... You go to the International Rugby League website, and it should be the first thing you sort of see. And it's not. And it shouldn't be that way, because if you and me are sitting here going, I'm not real sure about that, then your casual fan has no idea about it. And your fan that doesn't know much about rugby league doesn't even know these games are being played.
Yeah, it's a worry. Serbia plays Greece. They'll be for a spot in the World Cup as well. That's on this weekend.
Okay.
Yeah. So Greece aren't out of it yet. To be honest, I'd like to see them in the World Cup. I like seeing new teams in the World Cup.
Yeah, same here.
Which means I'd also like to see Serbia in there as well, but we can't have both.
We should be able to... They name the 16 teams, but then there's a fan vote of who to dump out. And, then just get rid of Wales.
I mean, that was pretty quick and easy, that one.
Yeah, real simple.
Yeah.
One of the old... You know what? I think they're the oldest international rugby league nation with New Zealand. Because they played in the first international, Wales and New Zealand, wasn't it? Pretty sure it was.
I got a feeling Wales may have actually been involved in the very first international. It might have been against England in 1903.
Wales versus England. I felt like it was Wales versus New Zealand for some reason. Anyway, either way, they've had their time. They've had over a century, and they're still crap. What are we doing?
I was wrong. It was Wales versus New Zealand. It was January 1, 1908. There you go.
You know what, Andrew? Stick around long enough. I'll teach you some things about rugby history.
I think that pretty much says to me that my time as a rugby league historian is pretty much over. I don't know what I'm going to do now.
You had a good run.
Had a good run.
That.
Yeah. But it's been found that... Is charlatan too strong a word?
Yeah.
Okay. Anyways, Scotland beat Greece 42-24. It was 18-16 to Scotland at half time, and even after an hour, it was 24-all. So this game was pretty close and in the balance. And Luke Douglas, in his last ever game of rugby league, I believe, scored the last try of the game.
Which is pretty cool.
Yeah, good work, Dougie. Next up, we had the triple header at Eden Park. And as many would remember from the preview episode we did last week, we sat there and said, right, Samoa versus Fiji. Samoa should run absolute roughshod over Fiji and rack up a big score. And this showed just how smart we are because Fiji won 44-18.
And this has been a problem with Samoa for a number of years now. And I think they need to look at the coach. How many times have we seen Samoa turn up to an international match? They've got all of the talent you want. They've even now got some really good halves. And they look like a football team that is ill-prepared, not interested. And at some point it comes back to the coach. And I couldn't believe how poorly they played. Fiji were fantastic. Fiji did everything you wanted them to do. They were the opposite. They were ready to play. They played really smart. You could tell that they'd been coached to play to their strengths, and they tore Samoa up the middle. The hooker for Fiji was absolutely outstanding. Fantastic performance, and they were just running all over them for the whole game.
They were. And the interesting thing about this match is both teams had centres at 5'8". So both teams went into this game with a genuine half and a genuine hooker and sort of wingers / fullbacks, not full-time fullbacks, but, part-timer sort of fullbacks. Yeah. So they only went into it with, half a spine for both sides. But Fiji, I mean, they got out. That first half of theirs was absolute perfection. They led 30-6 in that first half.
Yeah, and that because they didn't have a halfback, and there's always a thing with Fiji because their backs are so good. They like spreading the ball wide. In this game, they were like, okay, what we haven't got a halfback, so let's do everything out of dummy half and around the ruck, and it worked perfectly. And Samoa had no answer to it.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing too. We did mention in the preview one that if Fiji were to win, they needed to play through the middle, and especially Kickout needed to play closer into the ruck and not wider of the ruck, and that's exactly what they did. Because we were experts, we saw this, and they destroyed Samoa.
They really did. It was, and Samoa had, if you looked on paper, and we don't play games on paper, but if you look on paper, Samoa's side was, we should have really tallied up how many NRL first grade games there were between the two teams. It must be hundreds more in the way of the Samoan team, like many hundreds more. And yet Fiji just absolutely smashed them and really deserved the win. It was good to see them play so well after a poor World Nines competition. And Samoa, they've got to look at the coach now. It's how many more years are they going to go into games and disappoint before you say the coach has to go? Because they should be right there with Tonga, and they're just not. They're not on the same level at all.
Well, that's the thing. Every single player in that Samoan side played in the NRL this year.
Yeah,
and you can't say the same thing about Fiji.
No.
And that should be enough for you to realise that Fiji should have been the underdogs there. But I think the one thing that stands out for me, and it's something that rings true for Tonga as well, is Fiji looks like a cohesive, tight-knit unit and Tonga does too, compared to Samoa, who just look like a bunch of players just brought in, 15 minutes before kickoff.
Yeah, and that's the perfect way to describe them. And it's not like they're having a different preparation time than these teams. And they just look completely out of it. And that's got to come down to the coaching staff and the general staff for the team. because I just don't know how many more games we're supposed to see Samoa come into it, and you're like, oh, this is going to be a good contest, and they're completely unprepared for the match.
Let's see. Samoa should be one of the top, probably top 5 or 6 teams in the world.
Well, you look at the Samoan lineup, right? Would you take the Great Britain lineup over the Samoan lineup? Because I wouldn't.
No, but in saying that, I'd probably back the Lions to beat Samoa the way Samoa's playing.
100%. 100%.
That just seems wrong.
Yeah, it really does. And that's bad for the international game.
Yeah, this is the thing. If Samoa keeps going on this trajectory, then they're going to find themselves, instead of being, as they were a few years ago, going toe-to-toe with Tonga, they're going to find themselves playing against the Cook Islands. And if they're not up for that game, and trust us, a lot of people don't think much of the Cook Islands because they're so small and they don't play that often. But if you don't turn up for a game against the Cook Islands, you will lose.
Yeah,
they're a damn strong unit, very cohesive, much like Fiji.
Yeah, and the vast majority of teams in the world will lose to the Cook Islands as well. And they're not only that, they're going to give a difficult game to the top sides. It's disappointing about Samoa, because the other thing that they're in danger of having happen is that players will stop committing to the Samoan national team. And it won't just be about opportunities elsewhere. It'll just be the fact that these are professional players. As you said, they're all NRL players. And they'll start to go back to their club sides and say, you know what, the setup's poor. And when they have young players that are tossing up, should we play for where we were born, or should we play for? And they talk to the senior players, they're going to be saying, "Listen, dude, stay in the Australian system, and I'll play for New Zealand because you'll get more opportunity. The setup's better. You'll get more games." And that's what we can't have in international rugby league.
And that's the thing too, is that if they continue on this trajectory where they struggle and they're not even being competitive in games where they should be winning, then they'll start getting less games of football. Yeah, which is less appealing to the players who represent them as well, even if they want to play for them. If they're only going to get 1, maybe 2 games a year for Samoa or less, and those games aren't going to be against the elite teams, they're going to be against the next tier down. It takes a bit of shine off the opportunity, I'd imagine. I mean, everyone's still going to be proud to play for their country, but you want to play for your country against the best in the world and prove yourself on that stage, not against lower sort of ranked teams that you're expected to walk through.
Yeah, and you just have to look at how disappointing New Zealand has been. And New Zealand has a similar thing where they just don't turn up for the vast majority of their tests. And when they don't turn up and people stop wanting to watch them play, and that hurts the bottom line of the NZRL. All of a sudden Australia starts looking around and they're like, well, let's play Tonga instead. A lot of these games that Australia is playing Tonga, because we've played them twice now, those games would normally be New Zealand's games. And there's a reason why Tonga's getting the run. Yeah,
and why New Zealand's playing a couple of tests against Great Britain, which we'll get onto now. Great Britain dominated New Zealand when it comes to field position and possession, and yet they still lost 12-8. New Zealand were sloppy, ill-disciplined, gave away a heap of penalties, really dumb ones, turned over ball in their own half, just constantly put themselves under pressure for the whole game, and yet they still did enough to win the game. And that's without Kieran Foran, who went down with an injury after 6 minutes to his shoulder. There's no fracture, but it looks like he does need a shoulder reconstruction.
Yeah, there was an article that said it's not a career-threatening injury. I would suggest with all the injuries he's had, it is definitely a career-threatening injury, especially at the point he is in with his contract. New Zealand were terrible, and this was a very, very hard game to watch. New Zealand were not creative at all in attack. I know they lost 4 and kind of early, but I mean they were playing Matthew Elliott style football where it was just one out, hit up, And they did that for probably 65 to 70 minutes of the match. Their kicking game was poor, as you said. Their discipline was terrible. And, it's the same thing with Samoa. How many times are we going to see New Zealand just not really want to turn up and play? They can, cry during the national anthem and do the haka all day if they want. But when it's come time to play football, they're just not there.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I think too part of the problem that made this game hard to watch is the referee didn't assert himself at all when it came to keeping the ruck clean. The ruck was horribly slow. Both sides were guilty of it. New Zealand probably more so. But he didn't make any effort to try and speed up the play of the ball or anything like that. New Zealand, they played to their strength, which was through the middle. And Great Britain made the big mistake of trying to match him in that area. Like, what they should have been doing was throwing the ball around a bit. And they just didn't. They just went, oh, we'll do it too.
Yeah, and when they started throwing the ball around, and it was very late in the match, the game was pretty much over. I tell you what, Roger Tuivasa-Sheck, man, he was the best player on the field by the length of the straight.
Yeah. He was the difference between the two teams.
100%. He used his, and when you say the difference, I mean, this game could really easily have just been 6-all or something. And he used his size as much as anything to just smash through them. And I mean, he put on a great try, fantastic ball out the back that should have been, most players would have thrown that ball over the sideline. He nailed his winger. It was great. But yeah, he was fantastic. Not really anyone else in this match that really stood out. I thought Jermaine McGilvray, we've been really critical of him. I just thought his work rate for a winger was fantastic in the middle of the field.
Yeah, no, he was definitely the most improved player for Great Britain by a long way in this game. He was very, very good. Jackson Hastings was also much, much better. He looked a lot more comfortable this time around.
It was like he got to about the 70th minute and he thought to himself, if we're going to lose this match, I might as well try something. And he did start trying things, which was interesting. He should continue doing that because he is going to make mistakes, but it's better than him making no mistakes and they lose anyway.
Yeah, that's right. He's very good when he takes the line on as well. So I'd like to see him do that more often. He did it, once late in the game and made a line break. And there was not a single player backing him up or supporting him at all. So he had to die with the ball. But, I said in the preview that I thought that the lineup they had for this game looked better than the one they had for the game before, 2 weeks ago against Tonga. And I think for the most part, Great Britain were better performed. They did dominate field position, which is, you don't do that by fluke. No. Their defence was better. But attack-wise, I don't know why their attack is so poor. When you think you've got Bateman and Whitehead in the back row, who run very good lines, they're very good at getting offloads away. You've got two genuine attacking halves there in Widdop and Hastings. And Lomax is no slouch with the ball either. It staggers me that they can only score one try.
The thing is, though, like, I've heard so many raps about Lomax. I'd like to see when he actually does all of this wonderful, terrific stuff. And I don't care about what he does in Super League because he's playing against other Super League players. He just was a run-of-the-mill fullback for me in this game. He didn't really do anything to write home about at all.
And I think that's because I'd say he is very similar style-wise, not attitude-wise. He's got a better attitude to Matt Moylan, where he's not a fullback. He can fill in there if you need him to, but he's more of a 5'8". That's where he should be. That's when I look at the lineup and I went, given how Hastings had played, I would have preferred to see Lomax at 6, Widdop at 7, and just put someone else at fullback. It wouldn't have mattered who. Hardiker would have worked fine there. He doesn't have much when it comes to kick returns. He's safe enough under the high ball. To be honest, though, the Kiwis didn't test him at all under the high ball, which was weird. They just kept kicking to Ryan Hall.
Yeah, which was a smart move, to be honest, because Ryan Hall, and he's got a knee injury. Apparently, he's dislocated his knee, which, I mean, that's got to be a career-threatening injury for him. But Ryan Hall is not a first-grade player. He looks like he's a plotter at the moment, and I don't know why they persist with him. And the Kiwis did a good job of kicking him a lot. But yeah, when they would kick to Lomax, there was never really any pressure on him whatsoever.
No, that's right. And I said all along that I think Regan Gray should have been playing on the wing instead of Ryan Hall. Because you can throw the ball to Grace when he's in space, and 9 times out of 10 he's going to score a try. And that's the sort of thing you need. You need pace out there. And Ryan Hall doesn't provide that.
I tell you what, I was also with combination with Josh Hodgson and John Bateman. Hodgson would throw to Bateman so many times on the last tackle, and there was nothing doing. Like, they weren't threatening the Kiwis at all with that play. I don't know why they persisted with it, whether it was a part of the game plan or something and it was poorly executed or what. I thought Joe Philbin was fantastic off the bench for Great Britain. And Alex Walmsley, he was not too bad again. He was not bad in the first game against Tonga. He was not bad in this game.
He's one of those blokes who is just, James Graham sort of mold, where you don't get 5-star matches out of him. You just get consistent, solid performances every week that you can bloody set your watch to. He's just reliable as hell. And you need those sort of players in your teams, especially when you've got the likes of Thomas Burgess, who can either be rocks or diamonds.
Yeah.
You do need a bit of an offset against that, someone you can bring on to settle things down if it's getting a bit sloppy. Look, I think about the Hodgson-Bateman link-up thing. I was wondering at the time when I was watching it whether that was just an attempt to try and take Tuivasa-Sheck out of the game. Because so often we saw the Lions just conceding on the last tackle and just doing a turnover instead of kicking.
Yeah, it was very weird. And it happens so often. I don't know. I mean, you know what? I feel like, do you see Wayne Bennett in the pre-match interview with Sky Sports? He just looked disinterested in this whole thing. And it feels like he's just, racking up the cash that the Rugby Football League's getting given to him. There's nothing that I'm seeing from Great Britain that suggests that they're getting any sort of better than average coaching. Like, they're getting decent coaching, but that's compared to what they're used to getting from British coaches. I'm not seeing anything that's worrying me at all. They just sort of turn up, they plod along, and that's it. And I think the idea that Great Britain, and it's weird, you only ever heard it out of Great Britain, the idea that they have one of the better forward packs in the world, I hope I don't ever hear that again, because they just don't. They might not be in the top 5 or 6.
Yeah, it's they've more gone to the utility type forward pack instead of the big bustling, big powerful sort of packs that they did have in previous years. And that would work against teams like France and the like, but against these Pacific Island nations and Australia, they have huge packs, and you're not going to get by with just a mobile pack. You need more than that. So maybe that's something they need to look at. But yeah, they've got the next test coming up this weekend against New Zealand. I'd like to see both teams improve a fair bit. New Zealand's going to probably have to bring back Sean Johnson with Warren being out injured. So be interested to see what happens there. I'd still like to see, Lomax in the halves with it and have a genuine kick returner at fullback for Great Britain. I think that would change. That would help them in a big way.
Mm-hmm. Or even if because at this point you've got to start looking forward, I guess, and try Lomax at 5'8", put Widdop at fullback. I don't think he's a fullback anymore these days, but I think you've got to leave Hastings in there. I think if you dropped him now, you're not really going to learn much about what he can do. maybe look to the future at this point. They've got this game coming up and then one against PNG the following week. I think that, if New Zealand turns up next week, they should smash them.
Yeah. Sean Johnson's an interesting player too, because sometimes we've seen that a bit of a kick in the bum when it comes to form-wise and he gets dropped. Can actually help him to smarten up and get better.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes he can be a bit sulky and just sort of go back in his shell a little bit. So it'd be interesting to see how he responds to that.
Yeah.
Because he hasn't earned a test recall.
No.
So maybe he'll go, you know what, I've been lucky here. I need to take the most of this. And if he comes out and he plays a good game of footy, Great Britain are they shot. Simple as that.
And they'll bring back Brandon Smith too, who was apparently dropped for not having the right attitude or some bullshit. So that'll be that, because they were absolutely atrocious in terms of dummy half work. Like at one point I was thinking maybe they should chuck Benji Marshall in there just to have something, because nothing was happening with the halves. But yeah, we'll see what happens this weekend, I guess.
We will. Now, the next match, and my goodness, how glorious was this? Tonga.
Oh, it's amazing.
Or the Tongan Invitational. They beat Australia 16-12. It was Australia led 12-6 at halftime, but I think a lot of people, including the Australian camp, kind of expected Tonga to drop off in the second half, but they just didn't. They just kept going, and it was phenomenal to watch.
And I was surprised that people were kind of looking for that, because against Great Britain that didn't happen at all.
No.
And in this game they got to about 72 minutes into it, and they were getting tired, but damn, Australia was tired as well. It was a fantastic contest. Their forwards were once again magnificent. And the awesome thing about this, and I know I've said this a million times to you, there was nothing that you could point to say that they got this win, but it wasn't the referee, it wasn't a weird penalty, it wasn't a sin binning, there wasn't a weird try. They just flat out beat Australia. They were better than Australia, and it was fantastic to see, and the celebration was great. The crowd was going off. I didn't think that Australia played too poorly. It wasn't like they had an off game or anything. Tonga just outplayed them.
And out-muscled them. I think that was the main thing. The strength of their side across the park was brilliant. Now, in the follow-up to this game, Brad Fittler and Andrew Johns decided that the best way to deal with this was to, instead of give credit to Tonga for playing a phenomenal game of football, was to say, essentially, the Kangaroos lacked respect and they were rubbish and weren't putting in. And I think that's disrespectful to Tonga and the Australian players.
Yeah.
So one of the quotes here from Brad Fittler was, if Mal's fair dinkum, he's looking at that game thinking we might need a few new players here, because I thought some of their efforts were terrible. They didn't put their hands up in big moments and took really easy options and let each other down. They let Australia down and they let the Jersey down. It was a really poor standard. I find that to be way over the top. Australia didn't go there and get flogged. They got beaten by a better team. And I think all it was Australia had the wrong game plan for this match. As simple as that.
Yeah, and I look at the lineup that we named. Who do you really change in that lineup? It's about our best lineup. And you might bring in players that maybe are going to put in more effort and stuff like that, but you can't look at that lineup that we named and say, oh wow, now we should name our A team.
Yeah,
they're a bloody good lineup. We named about our best team. I'm trying to think of somebody that you definitely drop out of that side, and no one really comes to mind as a most certain to be dropped.
Yeah, you look at this team and go, okay, which player deserves to be in there? Hang on a sec. What's going on? Okay, no worries. I don't know what any of that was.
Yeah, I don't know.
Got me beat. Yeah, like which player outside that 17 who is currently available should have been in that squad?
Yeah, I mean, they only like I look at things like Jack White and Nick Kotrick. I like that combination. They give you size, they give you speed. Kotrick gets through a lot of work. He's a big body. I think that that's pretty handy to have. I think that Cameron Munster wasn't great and hasn't been fantastic in the two tests. But who do you replace him with? There's no one that really jumps out as a replacement for him. The forward pack, maybe Boyd Cordner is not the best forward, but you know,
you can't tell me though that he's worse than his opponents in Ben Masilla and Manu Ma'u.
Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah,
I'd rate Cordner above those two if we're going to be honest. So he should have been able to compete, and I think he did. I don't think he played a bad game. I don't think any of the Australians were really actually bad.
No.
Tedesco said that the loss should be on his shoulders for one mistake he made. I find that hard to accept.
Yep.
I just think Australia just played the wrong type of football for this game. And I think in their mind, they believed that Tonga would fade in the second half. And that's when they thought, right, that's when we're going to start throwing the ball around and scoring points to make sure we win this game. And Tonga didn't. They didn't fade. And that meant Australia were throwing the ball around at times when they needed to be going forward. And that was a failing, I think, in there. That's the only thing I put it down to. I'd never sit there and say that they didn't put in and they were crap and that they let Australia down. I don't feel let down by them.
No, not at all.
If they'd have lost by 40 or something like that, I'd be going, yeah, you know what? We need to bring changes in. There's something seriously wrong. But that Tongan side is a bloody awesome side.
Yeah, and like some of their performance, I mean, Katoni Staggs come into the halves, and it's like that was weird. It was like, what's going on here? He played outstanding footy. Lola here was fantastic. We were talking about some of the like not great plays that he did in the previous week against Great Britain. He was great in this game. Michael Jennings, if they're fair income with the Golden Boot Award and it's on international performances, Michael Jennings is the Golden Boot winner. Like he's shutting down everything that comes his way in defence. And in attack, he is just like electric.
They might, I agree with you. But we know with the Golden Boot that it changes. It changes the systems they use to determine who wins it. Changes all the time. It's it's not even a Golden Boot now. It's a bronze boot that's silver in colour.
Yeah. Anybody that wants to see the Golden Boot can go to leaguefreak.com. It's and you'll see it. You'll see the picture.
And go and check out Gary Jack on social media, Facebook or Twitter. He's got a picture on there of the Golden Boot that he won. I think it was in 86, 87.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a golden boot. And it looks brilliant.
Yeah.
And now they've got this weird trophy where it's made of bronze, it looks silver, it's called the Golden Boot, and you get the person who wins it gets a replica version of it, and they get to hold on to the actual trophy for, I don't even understand why they're doing this. This just sounds stupid. Anyway.
And it's not even like it's some elaborate, giant, expensive trophy where you're like, oh yeah, they can't give one of them out every year. It's like, you know what we'll do, Andrew? We'll make the Golden Boot Award exactly as is, and we're going to put up a video of it on YouTube.
We'll show people how it was made, because Freaky has contacts. He knows people in the trophy building industry. I kid you not, and he's seen how this one was made. So we'll put up a video and show how it was done.
It'll be fantastic.
Yeah. The last match of the weekend was Italy versus Spain. And we started up and watched this. So it took place in Italy. Italy won the game 34-4. There was and Italy won this despite having Ethan Natoli was sent off just after half time, and two other players, one Italian, Emmanuel Pacera, and a Spanish player, Julian Agulo, were both sin binned as well. It was a interesting match.
It was. We watched it, and it was filmed on, as you said, a Nokia.
Yeah, it looked like it was a Nokia. Then the 6000s versions.
Yeah, and it was a hard watch too. Jeez.
Yeah. Spain have this thing where and you look at their lineup and their players, even against the Italians, and a lot of them are not players playing in the Super League even. The Spanish forwards still look small against them. So to counter that, they tackle in this swarming sort of structure, which is very interesting and mostly effective for quite a while.
But so, I like their halfback was again very good. Their kicking game's fantastic, but they didn't have much field position at all. The possession went against them, and it was an interesting contest. By the end of it, we were both just about falling asleep. And
that's not entirely the fault of the game. It was 4 a.m. when the game ended.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was getting hard to watch. The referee, again, another one of these games, didn't look like he had a great deal of control over the match. So it was an interesting game, but it meant that I think Spain are definitely out of World Cup contention now because they needed to at least win one of their 2 games and they lost both of them.
Yeah.
So they're out of the hunt. Italy will be playing. I can't remember now. Let me have a look because we'll go on to that next.
Greece.
Italy will be playing Ireland this weekend, and that's a dead rubber because both of those teams have advanced through. I think so. This weekend all 4 games this weekend are all on Saturday, and it'll start with Serbia taking on Greece for a place in the World Cup. And then
I can't imagine Greece losing that one.
The way Serbia's been of late, well, Serbia, I think, if you had looked at Serbia and Greece about 2 or 3 years ago, you'd have gone Serbia should win that. But the way Greece have been since then, I'm going for Greece in that one. I think they should get the job done there. Very, very good squad. And then we'll have Papua New Guinea versus Fiji. And that's going to be interesting. You're going to have a team full of heavy hitters against a team who like to throw the ball around. That's going to be insane.
And I tell you what, I bet that's about as big of a height difference as you'll find in international rugby league too. The Fijian team is very, very tall. The PNG team is not quite as tall, but they make up for it by just being brutal.
They are. And what we're going to see there too is 2 very close-knit, cohesive units going off against each other. So I'm expecting that to be actually a pretty close sort of game. New Zealand takes on Great Britain in their second test. Probably, despite the fact that that's 2 Tier 1 nations, that's probably going to be the most boring game of the weekend.
Most likely. It'll only be interesting if New Zealand turns up. And, how many times? They turn up like a couple of times in a decade.
And then we ran out the weekend with Ireland taking on Italy in essentially, as I said, a dead rubber match. But that'll be a pretty interesting game. Ireland might have to, they'll probably have another whinge about food and having to walk somewhere. So we'll see how that goes.
Either the food will not be, it'll be like, they're like the 3 Little Bears Island. Yeah, you know the 3 bears? It's like, my soup's too cold, my soup's too hot. It's like, we'll see what the Italians do to them. A little bit of a culture difference there, hey, between the Irish and the Italians.
Yeah, I mean, I think Ireland will win, but I will be going for Italy because I'd love to see them get up in that game.
Same here, especially after the way Ireland was whinging about last weekend.
So that's this weekend's footy coming up. So looks like another late night for us.
Yeah, it'll be fun. I guess of all of the games that are on, it's got to be PNG versus Fiji is the real, interesting game. After that, then it's just seeing how bad Great Britain can actually be. We'll find out. But yeah, it's been a really cool run with the international games. There's been some really good performances.
Yeah, and I think moving forward, the one thing I'd ask is for the International Rugby League to consider being able to find a way to broadcast games that are played over in Europe, make it more easily available, easier to find, and better video footage. I'm not asking for 4K, but just something where it doesn't look like you're looking at pixelated squares.
Yeah.
And have it go through their official website would be fantastic, because then you just got one place to go to watch whatever you want.
Or at least put up a link.
Yeah, it'd be good. So, because instead we said to sort of go running around on Facebook trying to find links everywhere.
Yeah, and I tell you what, if they ever need international rugby league commentators, we're here. We'll do it.
We did a bit. We did a good live show.
Yeah,
it fell apart in the last 15 minutes when we both started going to sleep, but we slugged it out. We did it. We got the job done.
Yeah.
So no, that was pretty good. I'll also be looking very, very closely at the Greece v Serbia game. I'm going to see if I can watch it, even though it's on in the morning. I think Saturday morning. So
what time?
Oh, I think it might be 6 a.m. or something like that.
Oh yeah, I'm out.
Yeah, I'll see what I can do there. Who knows? That's pretty much it for the international footy this week. There's only 2 more games coming up after that, and none of them are in Australia. I think it's PNG versus Great Britain.
Yep.
And USA versus Cook Islands, and I think that might be for the final place in the World Cup.
Yeah, and like that one's going to be fantastic to watch. I think the Cook Islands will win that one. Could we see Great Britain having to beat PNG to have a win on a Lions tour? Can you imagine if you had said even 15 years ago that Great Britain will do a Lions tour to the Southern Hemisphere and they will not win a game?
It's crazy to think of. It's crazy to think of. And Great Britain have lost to Papua New Guinea before.
Have they? When?
90s.
Okay, because I was going to say I can't remember that one. And you know what? There was a World Cup game. I think it wasn't. When would it have been? 2013 maybe, where they played PNG, and PNG were a little bit unlucky to not win the game. So, yeah.
Yeah, it was 1990.
Okay, yeah.
PNG won 20-18, and the last time they met one another was in 1996, and Great Britain won that game 32-30.
32-30, wow. So, I'm thinking of England in the World Cup, yeah.
Yeah, so, interesting to say. I'd like to see PNG get up there, because I like seeing Papua New Guinea win. I don't care who they're playing, but that would be interesting to see, and also I dare say the ramifications that would come back in England if Great Britain went back there having not won a single game.
And I like to see Great Britain doing well in rugby league. Just not too well.
Well, the thing is, I think the thing we find in rugby league at the moment is Australia has been dominating for so long that a lot of Australians probably found themselves cheering for Tonga last weekend because you've gone, finally, some competition, a new team, someone that's actually on Australia's level. We're going to see some good probably football from now on in. We had that briefly with New Zealand in the early 2000s. And it helped rugby league in a big way. So I think rugby league, it needs to have a lot more competition on the international stage, and that does mean that Great Britain need to pull up their socks. They need to be on Australia's level.
They're getting further away. I always joke about how many years I heard we're catching up, and I used to take the piss out of it. Now the results, and you can see it clear as day, they're falling further and further behind. Not just Australia, everyone.
I mean, they're now falling behind New Zealand and some of the Pacific Islands.
Yeah. Yeah, and if you had to list the teams that you would like to see Australia play next, Great Britain's not in my top 5.
It's going to be all Islander teams.
Yep, definitely. And you would, as you said, watching Australia in a test match, they were finally tested, and it was great to see. I hope that I know that they've got an international schedule that comes out. I hope they reschedule so that we just play Tonga a lot more. because I want to see that.
Yeah, well, I'd like to see Australia playing more games against all of the Pacific Islands because I think it's just going to be better competition.
Yep, 100%.
It's going to be great. It's going to be great for all teams involved as well. So there we go. That's a good quick episode. I say quick; it was still close to an hour.
It's a quick one.
Thanks for tuning in, everyone. You can find the podcast on Twitter at Fergo Freak Pod. We now have a website.
Yeah, it's under construction, but you can see it coming together. It's fergoandthefreak.com. It's probably, I reckon, a week and a half away from being finished, but you can see where we're going with it. So check that out. Also today, big shout out and happy birthday to Arabella.
Yes, it looked like she got a bit merry yesterday. Had a few drinks with Nadine.
Yeah, I started getting tweets from the both of them when I don't like starting rumours, but I heard that they got absolutely shit-faced.
Well, if anything that I read in the media is anything to go by, one of them is going to need bail money.
Yeah, and, considering it's like the CEO on the legal team, I don't know where they get their money from because I ain't got it.
Well, we need to find out who's doing our accounts.
Yeah, I'm sure we well, we did some of our accounts the other day. Man, we were unprepared.
We were very unprepared. Very shocking news. Very, very eye-opening information that was uncovered there.
Yeah.
Anyways, thanks for tuning in, everyone, and we'll wrap this baby up, and we'll catch you all next time.